All right, I see some folks are still coming in, but we are going to go ahead and start with our welcome and our agenda. Welcome, my name is Daryl Schreiber. I'm Water for People's Donor Engagement Coordinator, and I will be kicking us off today. Thank you everyone for joining us. We are so excited you're here. We're so excited to have Mark and Samson with us. A little background on town halls. We started town halls to bring our community together online, and they have continued to be an excellent way to celebrate our supporters like you and the progress we're making together. We're going to start today with a brief overview of our model of Everyone Forever and how we plan to scale that as we move toward achieving SDG 6. After that, we'll dive straight into introducing Water for People's new co-CEOs, Samson Halubikele and Mark Dewey, where we'll get to know more about the two of them and their new roles as co-CEOs. Plus, we'll hear about their vision for taking Water People forward. And finally, we'll end with a Q&A session. I want to thank everyone who submitted a question during registration beforehand, and we will begin with those questions. We'll also encourage you to submit more questions using the Q&A function on Zoom webinar throughout the presentation. We'll answer as many questions as we can during the second half of our town hall. So beginning with an overview of the challenge before us, we have some numbers here that are quite staggering. The top number is about sanitation. It means that 1 in 2 people in the world don't have access to a decent toilet. 2.1 billion people are without safe water. That's about 1 in 3 people globally. And the 200 million number breaks down the up to 6 hours a day for women and girls who are fetching water in sub-Saharan Africa. 35,000 women could graduate from college every day in the time it takes them to collect water if they weren't walking for 200 million hours. It's a pretty huge problem, and we want to imagine a better way to solve it, not just for right now, but forever. And that's why we call our model Everyone Forever. The concept is as simple as it sounds. We want everyone, every family, clinic, and school, to have water and sanitation that lasts forever. But in practice, it takes a lot of time and resources to execute the strategy well. Moving forward, our plan is to continue proving that our Everyone Forever model works. We will lead the sector in promoting a systems change model and scale the model with partners and governments to end the water and sanitation crisis. And with this, we have launched our Destination 2030 10-year vision. Help countries achieve United Nations Sustainable Development Goal 6, which is clean water and sanitation for all. I am now going to pass to my coworker, Georgia David, who will introduce Mark and Samson.
Thanks so much, Daryl. And thank you for those who are joining us right now. I see we have a great group. Many of you whom I'm sure could probably give a similar introduction as Daryl just so wonderfully did. So thank you for being here with us. We know you're some of our most ardent supporters. A lot of our staff members on the line as well. So thanks for being here, Water for People employees. My name is Georgia David. I'm the Community Engagement Manager here at Water for People. And I have the distinct pleasure this morning to introduce Mark and Samson, as they are really the stars of the show today. I'm looking forward both as a colleague and then also as a host and moderator here with Daryl and Julie for today's town hall. So thank you again for joining us. With that, I'll give you a little bit of an introduction here to the two of them, although I'm sure you'll get to know them a lot better than my scripted intro here, but just so you know a little bit about them before we get started. So first, joining us is Samson Halubikele. Samson joined Water for People as the Africa Regional Director in 2017. He has deep experience in strategic planning, managing finances and programs, strengthening fundraising, managing grant processes, and mentoring people. He has visited or worked in 25 countries, 18 in Africa alone. Samson is based in London and savors time with his 2 children and playing competitive table tennis. He holds an MBA from Strathclyde Business School, a postgraduate diploma in business analytics from Lancaster University, and a BA in accounting from Addis Ababa University. So welcome, Samson. And I
Thank you,
will
Georgia.
introduce, yes, thank you for being here. And I'll introduce Mark as well. So Mark joined Water for People in 2008. You'll notice a similarity between the two of them, and they'll speak about this as well, but both are have been on our staff for quite a while and have deep experience within Water for People's programs. So Mark joined in 2008, again, as a coordinator of a school wash program across Central America. He later became Latin American Regional Director, Chief Programs Officer, and most recently, Water for People's Chief Operating Officer. Mark was a consulting engineer and then a Peace Corps volunteer in Honduras before joining Water for People. He holds an MS in Economics, Finance and Management from the Barcelona Graduate School of Economics, and his BS is in Civil Engineering from the University of Nebraska. Go Cornhuskers. Mark is based in Denver and enjoys strong family ties to Central America, where his wife and 2 of his 3 children were born. So thank you, Mark, for joining us as well today.
Yeah, thank you, Georgia. Happy to be here.
And without further ado, I'm going to get started with the Q&A. So Daryl and I have some questions that we had put together beforehand, especially as everybody starts to kind of get familiar with this webinar. We encourage you, please, to put your questions in the Q&A. But first up, Daryl and I will take turns asking Samson and Mark a few questions that we have. Then we'll move into your questions. So we encourage you to use that Q&A function. You're welcome to use the chat as well to interact and introduce yourself, as people already are. It's wonderful to see everybody joining from all over. But again, please use the Q&A feature for your questions so that we can keep track as we go. Also, we decided that, I know Zoom is the name of the game for the past couple of years, so you're all probably very familiar with this, but this is a Zoom webinar. So I'm going to stop screen sharing here so that we can make this a little more conversational, and then you can utilize that function for your chat. So I'm going to end screen sharing here and get us started on our first question, which hopefully is a good segue into learning more about the 2 of you. Our first question takes you back and really want to know how you started working in this field. So we'll start off with Samson. Samson, what made you get into the water industry or this field in general?
Thank you very much, Georgia. Appreciate it. I would say I started working in this sector totally by accident. I graduated from university, as you mentioned in the introduction, and my first job was as a civil servant with the Ministry of Planning in Ethiopia. And after a few years of that, I joined an international development organization based in the UK because simply I was looking for a new job at that time. But my first trip working for that organization to a place called Konso in the southwest of Ethiopia, where people had extremely difficult livelihoods, really changed my life. Although I grew up watching on TV what poverty is like, what hunger is like, etc. To go out and see it myself with my eyes, how children were looked after, how the women groups that we were supporting were looking after the goats that they were given, even more than their children, etc. Made me very sad at that time, and I wanted to really work in that sector, hoping that the work that my colleagues and I do will improve the quality of life for people. And it's been 31 years since that time, and I have never really looked at doing anything different. So thank you.
Thank you, Samson. And how about you, Mark?
Yeah, thanks, Georgia, and thanks everyone for joining today. As Georgia mentioned, I studied civil engineering, and I worked in an engineering consulting firm in the US for about 5 years. And then I made a completely irrational economic decision and joined the Peace Corps. So I was a volunteer for a couple of years in Honduras, where I was assigned, and I was part of the water and sanitation program, and had a really great experience in the Peace Corps. Not everyone does, but I learned so much during my 2 years there.
Fantastic. Thank you both. What led you to Water for People initially? And we'll start with you, Mark.
Yeah, so building on that experience that I had in the Peace Corps in Honduras, my first year of service, going in as an engineer, I thought it was all about building systems, constructing rural water supply systems. And I designed and supervised construction of a bunch of them, more than 20 during my first year of service in Honduras, including several that the Honduras Office of Water for People ended up funding. So as Peace Corps volunteers, we didn't have any money or access to funds, but we had to find organizations or government agencies that would fund the work that we were designing. But I came across so many small communities, villages that had water systems that were failing. Many of those had just been built after Hurricane Mitch, which struck Central America, I think in 1998. Massive amounts of aid money came in 99, 2000. And so most of these rural water supply systems that I came across had just been built 2 or 3 years before I was there in 2004. So I really decided to shift my focus entirely to sustainability and really just the basics on water treatment and how to calculate tariffs, sustainable tariffs, operation, maintenance. Those are the types of challenges that are the things that Water for People do not shy away from. And in fact, the forever piece of our Everyone Forever model is really focused on those very aspects of our work.
Thank you. And Samson, what led you to Water for People initially?
Thanks, Daryl. I worked for 3 different UK-based charities for about 26 years. And when I left my last job as Chief Executive Officer of a private foundation based in London, I heard about the vacancy with Water for People for Africa Regional Director role. And I knew a little bit about Water for People from my time as a country director with another organization in Malawi. And I felt, okay, I know this organization, maybe let me learn a little bit more about them before I consider applying. And I went to the website and browsed through and read the annual report, etc. And I was very impressed by what was written, particularly about the Everyone Forever program approach that you mentioned earlier in the introduction, Daryl. And I said, well, I don't believe any organization does its programming in this manner, but why don't I express interest? And if I'm invited for interviews, I will ask more questions to learn whether they really do what they say they do. And I had the good fortune of being invited for interview, and Mark was in the interview panel in 2017, and I did ask a few questions, and I felt maybe they do what they say they do. And to be very honest, since I joined, I have found the way Water for People does its strategic planning and its program approach and the focus on sustainability, etc., even better than, to be honest, that I have read on the website. So that's kind of what led me to Water for People. Thank you.
And with that, I think this is a good segue. What is the motivation that continues, you being able to do this work? It's one thing to get into it, but both of you have been with the organization now for quite a while. Where do you find that motivation to continue doing the amazing work that you do?
Thanks, Georgia. I think for me, the really most important thing that excites me to get up early in the morning every day and start work is the knowledge that the work that our partners and us do really makes the quality of life better to hundreds of thousands of people each year. And that is not just from reading the reports, etc. I have the excellent opportunity to travel to all of our country programs in Africa on a regular basis. I was in Rwanda, for example, last week, spent 3 days with colleagues traveling to the different districts where we have our work, and to see with my own eyes, regularly how we support the local governments to provide the services that they have the obligation to do so, the duty to do so, and also the scale of the programs that we have in Rwanda, for example, working in 4 districts that are approaching having universal coverage, but also the districts taking their responsibilities seriously in terms of financing, operation and maintenance, etc. Generally, to see the quality of life improving for people as a result of the contributions that our partners and us make is really motivating. Thank you.
And how about you, Mark? Where do you find that inner motivation? Especially
Yeah.
since 2008, being with the same organization, I imagine comes from many different places.
Yes, thanks, Georgia. So yeah, for me, I mean, the work that we're doing is absolutely foundational for both human development and economic development. And I think everyone that's here today on this call understands that and believes that, or you wouldn't be with us. But if you don't, just imagine what your family's life might be like if you didn't have clean, reliable water service or no toilet. That's really what underlies, you know, the importance of this work. At a personal level, I don't talk about this often because it's uncomfortable, but my wife and I lost our nephew, Eliel, in 2009 in Honduras, not long after he was born in a hospital in San Pedro Sula. He died not because of the condition that he was born with, but due to an infection that was almost certainly caused by the completely inadequate water, sanitation, and hygiene conditions in that hospital. And so I think about Eliel pretty often.
Thank you for sharing that with us. As Georgia mentioned, you've both been with the organization for a long time. What is one of your most memorable moments at Water for People?
Yeah, I can share first. I'll just mention, yeah, I've been here at Water for People for 14 years. Just amazing experiences. Far too many to pick just one. But our country directors, the 9 country directors, are the people who lead the work in each of the countries where we work. They're by far the most important people in our entire organization. And perhaps, you know, what I enjoy doing most is spending time with them. Long conversations, sometimes during car rides or over dinner in person. I really love learning from them. I actually just last week had the opportunity to visit our program in Peru after quite a long time during the pandemic, not having an opportunity to travel internationally, and met our country director there is named Gisela, and Gisela joined us during the pandemic, so I had a chance to meet her in person, and we just had an outstanding experience meeting with national government officials, also regional government officials, a governor, and then visiting communities, and just learned so much from her. That's my favorite thing to do.
That's great. Samson, what's one of your most memorable moments?
Thanks, Daryl. I'll just very quickly mention 2. One was, I think, my first week in the job in 2017. I had the opportunity to travel to Entebbe in Uganda to take part in our annual Forever workshop. And I was just listening and learning, and I was really impressed by each participant's level of knowledge and passion for the work, and how invested in the process they were, coming from Malawi, from Rwanda, from Uganda, a number of colleagues coming from our Denver office as well. And that really impressed me and just left a very strong memory in my mind, particularly about the passion and the commitment of colleagues involved in the work. And then shortly after that, going out to one of our Everyone Forever districts in Uganda, in Kamwenge, and visiting a large-scale piped water scheme that the team was constructing there in a place called Bigoli sub-county. And I said, wow, I have been in this sector for many years, and this is, you know, a huge project. NGOs don't do this kind of projects. These projects are normally done by governments or the likes of World Bank or African Development Bank, etc. So I was really impressed. And since then, I see, of course, so many more such systems across all our Africa country programs. So thank you.
That's always a good problem to have if you have too many memorable moments to narrow down to one. So thank you for sharing. And If those names sound familiar for anybody on here, I know there's a lot of attendees of the town halls that also attend our impact tour. You probably recognize quite a few of those locations and names that Samson just mentioned if you attended our impact tour in Uganda. But with that, kind of zooming out a little bit, what are, I'm sure this probably feels similar to your interview panel as when you interviewed for this role, but what are your visions and goals, really high level, speaking for Water for People? You can start with you, Samson, since you're unmuted.
Thanks, Georgia. I think as perhaps most of our participants know, we recently developed our Destination 2030 vision and strategy, and Mark and I were part of the teams that worked on the development of that, and we are absolutely committed and excited to implement this very ambitious strategy, particularly our focus on making the national systems in the countries where we have operations stronger, so that although the work that we do directly will benefit still millions of people, but we are still at the end of the day a small organization, and the much bigger impact we can achieve is by supporting national and local governments and other organizations with resources to serve more people. So that's something that Mark and I was absolutely focused on. Thank you.
Yep, and so yeah, that 200 million, that's now our key impact number, and that's an increase in impact by orders of magnitude that we haven't had at Water for People in the past. It's just a huge number, and we are going to impact the lives of 200 million people in the run up to 2030 with improved water and sanitation services. It's only going to be possible through our partnerships. So I know that there will be questions about how we partner, who we partner with, but those partnerships with national governments are absolutely key to all of this, but also other influential actors in the countries of focus. So some of the international financial institutions, also some of the larger NGOs that are working in these countries sometimes have wash work, and we work closely with them to try to make sure that that is as impactful and effective as possible.
That's great. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the biggest challenges you see in the next few years for Water for People?
Yeah, so on challenges, so growth and the economy right now, so no secret, right? But to support our hugely ambitious growth and impact, we have to grow our revenue. And the private sector, private sector companies, businesses can just kind of jack up prices of goods and services during times like these, and they're doing that. But obviously we are not an organization that's profiting from the sale of goods or services. And in fact, our top line comes under pressure during times of inflation because, some of our very generous donors might not feel as well off financially. And so, but the reality is, in order to attract and retain the best talent possible, we have to keep up with wage increases. We also have to pay increased prices for construction materials in the countries where we work. Nonprofits right now are really facing an unfortunate squeeze, probably for the next year or two.
Thanks, Mark. Thank you, Mark. Samson, what are some challenges that you see?
I would be primarily repeating what Mark said, really, in terms of for us to achieve the 200 million impact number, we really need to sing from the same hymn sheet with our partners, particularly our local government and national government partners. And we do understand that in most of the countries where we work, the governments are pulled in different directions, and sometimes they struggle to allocate their meager resources in a manner that benefits their citizens, in a manner that is serving the interests of particularly the poor people who live in rural areas. And for us to continue the engagement that we have with those important partners and help them as much as we can to continue to focus on the 2030 targets that they have themselves agreed to is a major challenge. And then just secondly, for us to achieve those impact numbers, we need to mobilize two extremely important resources. And one is to continue to attract and retain very talented colleagues. And then secondly, to continue to mobilize larger resources than we have managed to date. So those are major challenge areas that we have to continue focusing on. Thanks, Dan.
Thank you both for those answers. I think we're going to transition now into the Q&A questions that our registrants have asked either ahead of time or we've had a couple come in during this session. So if you have a question, I would remind you to put that question into the Q&A section of Zoom, and we will bring it forward if we have time. Georgia, would you like to take the first question?
Yeah, thank you both, Mark and Samson. Those were obviously questions that Daryl and I put together, and we're really excited to hear now from the rest of the town hall participants, and appreciate you both being so candid in sharing what led you here, what motivates you. I think that was a really interesting one for me to hear about, especially working with both of you, but not maybe knowing some of those personal stories you shared. So thank you. And with that, I'm sure this is probably a question that you were expecting first. So it's actually kind of phrased in two different ways. So I'll share maybe two different versions of the questions from two different attendees. From Eugene, what is a co-CEO model of leadership and how does it work? And similarly, I'll join it with a question from Don. What are the advantages that you hope to leverage from sharing the CEO job? And whoever wants to kick it off, we'd love to hear.
I'm happy to start. So, and it's a great question. We get asked all the time, of course. Co-CEO models not so common, but we, last fall when our former CEO announced that she was going to move on, Samson and I had over a series of weeks, discussions, debates, basically me trying to convince Samson to apply to become our next CEO, and Samson likewise trying to convince me to apply to become our next CEO. And we actually learned about the co-CEO model from someone who's a mentor of Samson's, who is a co-CEO of a UK-based organization. So we had an opportunity to learn a lot from that person and the other co-CEO there, and really learn more about kind of successes and failures. There are quite a few failed co-CEO models out there where people have come together mostly that didn't have experience or a trusting relationship to start with as they embarked upon the co-CEO journey. What Samson and I have done is we really just basically took the job description, 10 or 12 main functions, and agreed several of them Samson is primarily responsible for, several I am primarily responsible for, and then a number of them we're jointly equally responsible for. And so we've really just said through that discussion, it's really been based upon our own experiences and our complementary leadership backgrounds as well, to arrive at what we believe is the most effective model for co-leadership of the organization. And yeah, we decided to apply jointly, and the board was interested in learning more, and we competed, and here we are. Samson, anything to add?
That's very good. Just a couple of quick pointers. I think the most important thing really for such a model to work is to have a really strong trust on each other. And if Mark and I didn't believe that we have a complete trust on each other's integrity, honesty, and in terms of being able to clearly communicate and share responsibilities, and also just ensure we are every day committed to what is the best interest of the organization instead of who gets what decision right, and how does anything we do or decide raises one's profile, etc., etc. So if we didn't work together for more than 4 years and developed that level of trust and confidence in each other, I certainly would not have got into this kind of arrangement. So just to point out the importance of the trust, and also obviously very open and honest communication, which we are trying to develop talking at least twice a week to make sure that anything we want to discuss, we have a list and we discuss and agree and move on and try to provide as clear leadership as we can to our colleagues in the global leadership team and across our country programs. Thank you.
It's great, really living those values of transparency that we aspire to here at Water for People. We touched on this a little bit, but can you speak more about Water for People's plans for growth, specifically about how we plan to expand and select countries to work in, and if that's in the works?
Okay, I'll start with that. Just two angles to that. First of all, in terms of growth, obviously for us to achieve the very ambitious targets that we have set for 2030, we need to grow. And for that, there are different avenues, particularly mobilizing resources from the general public, particularly in the US. And that's really important, not only from the perspective of mobilizing resources, but really bringing to the attention of people the kind of circumstances where people in different parts of the world are living, not because they wanted to live in that kind of situation, but primarily because that was where really they were born, and how all of us can work together to really help people, even in a small way, to lead a dignified life. So that's one part. The other part is we have been for the last few years working very hard to build our systems properly, particularly in terms of our grant management, in terms of our financial management, etc. And there are, a lot of resources out there if we have the capacity to secure and properly put to good use and report on those kinds of funds. A good example is, for the first time in our history, we were able to secure a $21 million grant from the US government for our work in Rwanda, which absolutely perfectly fit with our country strategic plan for Rwanda. So that's one aspect. In terms of the country program selection or growth you mentioned, this is one thing that we haven't done for many years until early this year, after we came up with our Destination 2030 strategic plan, which both Mark and I mentioned a few times already. We believed that starting at least one new country program would be most appropriate to achieve the 200 million target. And we believed that the continent where we can achieve that better will be in Africa. So we agreed to identify at least one country where we will start a new country program. So through a proper process that had gone through 4 phases using different criteria, we have now decided to start a new country program in Tanzania, and just the countries that borders all of our current country programs: Malawi, Rwanda, and Uganda. And my colleagues and personally myself have been out there a couple of times meeting with government officials and also learning about the sector, the country, etc. And we have already completed our application for registration in the country, and we expect to start some small-scale operations in Tanzania by October 2022. Thank you.
Mark, is there anything you want to add before I'll jump to the next question?
Nothing to add. Nothing to add. That was great, Samson. Thank you. Let's go ahead and go to the next one, Georgia.
Right. Yes, thank you so much, Samson. That's very exciting news that I know our whole global team is very thrilled to hear, and actually answers another question that we had, which was very specific, and maybe she already knew this, but Valerie had asked, do you foresee further expansion in West Africa? And Samson obviously just shared, yes, we do, and we're planning later this year, and plans have already been in the works, as he's mentioned. So hopefully that's an exciting answer for you, Valerie. Another question that we have on here from Charlene, and I think it plays into what the two of you have been talking about with visions and growth and kind of next steps. But I think it's a really prudent question and something that I'm really proud about of working with Water for People is the partnerships and collaboration that we build. And so her question is, how do collaborative efforts with other water charities or organizations factor into our Destination 2030 plans?
Great. I'll start on this one. So one of the things that, again, that we recognize is that Water for People alone is not going to be able to achieve, the supporting national governments, the Sustainable Development Goal targets for goal number 6. Has to be in collaboration with others, primarily governments. But one thing that we've done is we've started what we're calling the Destination 2030 Alliance. So we and another leading nonprofit in the water space that's called IRC, they're based in the Netherlands. They're really complementary to Water for People in that they're known as a think tank or a think and do tank. Think and do tank. They're very good at influence, national level influence, global influence with other actors. What we've done, Water for People and IRC, is that we've started an alliance that we call the Destination 2030 Alliance. So our two organizations have come very closely together. We have a number of cross-organizational teams to really do several important things. One is that influence piece, have a common influence and advocacy agenda for the two organizations. But also to share our human resources and thought leadership and ideas across countries. So between the two organizations, we're working in 15 countries currently, given the two geographic footprints of the two organizations. And what we've committed to is really coordinating at all levels and reporting our impact, our shared impact together as two organizations to the world on an annual basis. And that is something that we're really excited about because we're starting to also talk with some other organizations in what is a very fragmented water space, honestly far too fragmented, about the possibility of joining this alliance and working together on the Destination 2030 Alliance that we've launched together with IRC. So Samson, anything to add there?
No, that's fine. Let's give time to other questions. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you both. Let's see, we do have a couple more questions. You sort of addressed this already previously and what you see the biggest challenges in the next few years for Water for People. Is there anything more immediately that is different from the problems you see in the next couple of years, a challenge or something that we have going on right now that we need to address?
I'll mention one, and it's really the political situation in Nicaragua and the environment for nonprofits working in that country is deteriorating rapidly. So it's a very unfortunate situation, and the government of Nicaragua has actually forcibly closed a number of nonprofits working in that country. So we have not been closed, but we're doing our own risk assessment and trying to understand better the situation there. That's one of the most, that's probably one of the most important current issues and debates right now within Water for People with the leadership team. Anything to add, Samson?
Just very briefly, what we mentioned earlier in terms of particularly the economic outlook in the world and the increase in the cost of living and also the cost of materials, etc. Particularly in some of our country programs, we are involved in very substantial investments to provide services to communities in our Everyone Forever districts, and we need to very closely monitor the impact of such very drastic and fast changes on our ability to deliver the targets that we have set. So that's something that we are very closely monitoring. Thank you.
Thank you both. It's not easy to talk about the challenges. It's so much more fun to talk about vision and goals, but those are obviously very real needs that need to be addressed and assessed immediately. So Thank you for sharing those. Speaking more kind of maybe zoomed in a little bit, we just got a question in from Don. Can you share updates or thoughts on current efforts around working domestically? And then parentheses, so I think this is domestically meaning North America as well. So throughout the US and Canada.
Yeah, I'm happy to start on this one as well. So there are 2 million people in the US without access to adequate water and sanitation services, and that is completely unacceptable. Water for People has long been asked, why don't you work right here at home? And we have gone through a process over the last year or so where we have a volunteer corps called the World Water Corps. Outstanding professionals, mostly in the North American water wastewater sector, but also beyond, who we can rely on at times to conduct assessments and studies for us. Last year, we had a team of 3 volunteers do a desk study to help us understand better the situation in the US, and particularly in a number of hotspots, if you will, different places where the geographic locations within the US that are known to be particularly challenging, to help us understand better who's there and what challenges we might face if we were to work in that space. Through that process, we came across another nonprofit that's entirely focused on domestic wash work. It's called Dig Deep. We have a non-financial MOU with them. We're learning more together with them about the challenges in the US, and actually are convening in October an event in DC to really start to form a US wash sector, bring together the different organizations and agencies of the government that are working in this space, and trying to create more cohesion and more concerted efforts and plans towards closing the gap in the US. Similarly, in Canada, we have a volunteer team finishing an assessment of the water and sanitation situation in Canada, focusing primarily on the Indigenous communities, First Nation communities specifically. There are about 600 in Canada, many of which don't have access to adequate access to water and sanitation. And so we are identifying potential niches, if you will, for Water for People to support in Canada as well. So that's where we are today, and we're just very hopeful that through a little bit of support from Water for People to help others be more strategic in their work and bring planning together, we can actually make a difference in North America as well. It's a great question. Anything to add, Samson, on that one?
No, that's fine. Thanks, Mark.
Yep.
Well, thank you both so much. We're coming up to the end of our 45 minutes here. We knew this would be chock full of information, and it is. So I apologize if we didn't get to everybody's questions. There were some really insightful ones, and we really appreciate everybody for being with us and being willing to maybe ask some difficult questions, and Mark and Samson being willing to share about those difficult and also insightful questions. I'm going to just present really quickly here as we close. Just to say, again, a big thank you to everybody for taking time out. 45 minutes is certainly a lot of time to ask for you to share with us in your day. So we just want to say truly thank you to Mark and Samson for your passion, willingness to be so open about your journeys to where you are today. And thank you for your insight and experience. We are grateful as obviously employees and staff of Water for People, but also I think I can speak on behalf of the supporters on the line here today to thank you both for your courageousness and willing to lead Water for People into, as we've mentioned, the next 1, 5, 10, etc. years into the future. And thank you to all of our supporters on the call today. Our town halls have been such a lovely experience to be a part of throughout the last couple of years. As we started this in 2020, we wouldn't be able to have the impact that we do without you, truly. So thank you very much. Wanted to just mention briefly as well, for those who support us or are interested in supporting us in a financial way, a huge thank you to CDM Smith, our partner. This match has been extended, $25,000 match. So if you feel inclined, know that your impact will be doubled thanks to CDM Smith. And again, just one final thank you. If you leave with nothing else, please just know how grateful we are for you. This town hall will be living in perpetuity on our YouTube channel. So please feel free to share with others. Go back and watch if you were multitasking or unable to join for part of it, and share it with anybody. We really appreciate your time. So thank you all again. Thank you to Daryl, my co-host, Samson and Mark, and to Julie, our third staff member here, putting this together. So with that, we'll leave you and hope everybody has a lovely day.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Georgia. Thanks, Daryl.
Thanks
you.
all. Thank you.